So in this part of the tutorial, we're going to teach you talk about the variables, how to define them, how to write them, how to use them, and what are the different kinds that we're going to we can use in order to assign them in different places. So here, let's create a new file here and call it variables.py. And here in the variables.py, we're going to define, for example, a variable which is integer or int. So we do not need to write int before x. We're going to simply write x equals 5, and it's going to understand that it's integer because there is no dot after 5. So if you're not familiar with the kind of data types, we're going to cover this on another tutorials related to the data types, but here simply we're going to show you how you can assign different numbers, a string, to a variable and print them. So right here I'm also going to write y equals for example 5.7, and it's going to understand that it's a float. We do not need to write float y equals 5.7 because here in Python there's nothing, we have nothing such as writing the kind of data type, but in other programming languages like Rust, like JavaScript, like C, we have we need to write the kind of data it is. And for example, if we want to define a string, for example, write s equals to a kind of a string, for example, a name like Neil, and here we save it and we want to print always all together inside print statement. So we simply write x comma y comma s, and it's going to print all the three variables inside this print statement. Okay, let's save the file and run the code using Python 3, and here it's not hello world.py, it's variables.py. Variables.py. Let's press enter. What's the problem here? Variables, and here, okay, it's not with a capital V, it's with the small v. Okay, here we've got 5.7 and Neil. Okay, that's it. If you want to, we're going to later teach you how you can put it on different lines, but if you want to do so right now, there's another way. You can write print x, print y, and print s on different print statements, and doing so will print them on different lines. There are also other ways to do that. We're going to cover in the next tutorials, but here, as you can see, we have the three results on different lines. And so that's it for defining the variables. But if you also want to know how to write the variables, there are certain ways using which you can define the variables. For example, if you write sum of numbers, which means the addition of different numbers, if you write it this way, and for example you write x plus y and save this, it's going to throw an error. Why? Because we shouldn't place spaces between the name of between the letters of the name of the variable. So if I save this script and run the code, we're going to face an error. Okay, it says that this is an invalid syntax, so the syntax related to the name of the variable needs to change. So to do so, we can, in order to make things easier, and also more readable for other developers to understand. For example, we want to tell them that this variable is going to be assigned to the type of the variable that which is the addition of the numbers. Is going we're going to set the kind of name that defines the operation. Okay, here we say sum of the number, which is going to represent that we're also adding the two numbers together. So let's save this, and here it shouldn't throw an error. As you can see, it's not, and so we can so easily print the sum of number. Sum of numbers, okay, but they're really not important here. So let's save this, and in the terminal run it. As you can see, it has added up the two numbers, 5 and 5.7, x and y, and that's it. So if you want to write it in another way, you can also write some underline of, underline, and if you don't want to use capital letters, you can also write it this way, but not a very big difference. It depends on the readability, and this way it's much more readable. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, we haven't changed the sum of number with underlines here in the print, and once we save this, it's not gonna throw any error. Okay, we haven't saved it. Okay, that's it. That's it for defining the name of the variables. So here we've learned that we can define any kind of data type that we like without mentioning the without declaring the type of the variable. So that's why Python is much easier to write. You don't need to write all the data types, and it's going to understand it. And we can simply write the result of the variables, whatever they are, in the print statement. And this is the way we're defining the variables. So there are also other ways for you to define variables. For example, you can here write all of them in one line. For instance, you can write x, comma y, comma z equals, and here let's erase this part, and for example we can write, so we can write this in the parentheses 5, comma 6, comma 7, for instance, and then you can write here x, y, and z, x, y, and z. And let's omit these parts, we don't need them anymore. So omit nil. Okay, the code is much cleaner. Let's see what happens as a result of this code. Okay, as you can see, it's gonna print all of them all together, 5, 6, and 7. So in order to make things shorter and easier to read, here we've it's been boiled down to only 2 lines. It's got much easier compared to the very first code that we had written. So instead of writing x equals 5, y equals 6, and z equals 7, and then print them different on different lines, so that it becomes 6 lines, instead of that we can make it shorter to 2 lines. And this is how Python makes it easier for you to write variables, much simpler and shorter. Also, there's something else. If you want to assign a number or a string or anything else to 3 different variables, you need to simply write x equals y equals z equals 5, and if you print all of these together, they're all going to show you the same result. And this is the way you can write your codes much simpler and shorter. So as you can see, they're all going to show you 5. And this is another syntax for defining the variables. Another very useful representation of the variables in strings is the time when we want to write different strings consecutively, one after the other, and put them inside one statement. So to do so, for example, we have x equals to, for example, we want to say hello world, hello, and inside another variable called y, want to write, for example, world, and in another variable, for example, z equals from, and in other variables, for example, it's s equals to, and in this one we want to, for example, set a name of a person, or for example the name of our group, Arashtad, and we want to put them one after the other consecutively in a certain order. So in order to have them inside one line, we can use plus between the variables. So here, for example, we write x plus y plus z plus s, so plus s, and so let's save the code and run it and see what's going to be the result. So here, hello world from Arashtad. So right here, if we want to place a space, let's put it before Arashtad, or for example, we can define another variable called, for example, as for example d, and here we can place the space and place d here between z and s. And so let's save the code and run it. Hello world from Arashtad. As you can see here, we have the space we wanted, and so that's it. This is a very useful representation of the variables, string variables especially, when we want to place different strings with different and automate it, for example, hello world from Arashtad, hello world from Jack, hello world from Joe, and so on and so forth. And you want to automate the process, you say, for example, you write hello world from, and then you place the name of a person who writes their name, and you will print, for example, hello world from the name of the person.